Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sin of Grace podcast. We are missing Tony today, but
We are.
it's going to be okay.
Like our loud brother.
That's right. That's right. But welcome. Glad that you are joining us today. We're talking all things impatience and patience. But before we get into our sermon, I wanted to just check in with you to see how you doing and what's going on at the church that everybody needs to know about.
Yeah, doing great. Other than, we got a lot of sickness around, so we're just trying to keep everybody healthy right now as everybody's dealing with a little bit.
Yep.
So if you're watching, especially from this part of Ohio, but it's probably just all over the place right now. A little messy right now. But man, at church, we just had our first Discover Grace class.
Yeah, that was last
We
night.
hosted at your house last night, which was really good. It's always exciting to see people that are trying to take first steps in the community and figure out how do I actually come in as an outsider and really start to find my people, my tribe.
Yeah.
And I love getting to see them do that, and lots of different staff coming the next couple of weeks for that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's going to be a good season for us, man. We're almost a month and a little bit away from Easter, month and a half,
I know. That's
which is wild.
coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. We just got done with Christmas like yesterday.
Yep. But that's the Super Bowl for Christians. That's like their Super Bowl, right?
It
So,
should be,
yeah. And so we're looking forward to that. We have our men's group coming up, starting, was it next Monday?
Next Monday, I think so. March 3rd, right?
March 3rd. Yep.
And signups are still live for that too. If you go to centervillegrace.org/next steps, it is not too late to sign up. We've got a good crew of like 16, 17 guys right now on the roster.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an awesome time. Just lean in, pursue the Lord together, find accountability together, and just be challenged.
Yep. I'm really looking forward to it. Yep. Tony and I are leading it up. And so if you have not signed up and you're interested, man, there's still time and we'd love to have you. Just a solid group of guys that we're looking at this list. I'm going, this is going to be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
and I know you're going to be there too, right?
gonna be there.
It's
Can't
going to
wait.
be great. It's going to be great. Well, if you weren't with us on Sunday, or if you were, you know that we've been talking about this idea of why can't we be friends is our new sermon series. We're looking at relationships and all things friendships related. And we're actually working through 1 Corinthians 13 as kind of our springboard. Paul gives us a list of what love is and what love isn't and what love does and what love does not do. And so that really helps us kind of create our own separate list of what gets between us based off of what Paul's list is. So the first week we said that love is patient.
Yeah.
And so what is your relationship with patience?
Not great.
Not great. Huh?
I'm
Honest.
impatient by it.
Yeah.
But I'm just wired that way. But I'm trying to learn. I've tried. Anytime we do this podcast, I always, say I've tried to learn as I've gotten a little older.
Yeah.
How to navigate that. So I'm hoping I'm always growing in that.
Yeah.
But I am, I can be very impatient at times, especially when I can see what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Right.
I am just not a very good waiter. I like things to get done quick.
Let's go.
And a lot of times at detriment of, it can be relationships, it can be the detriment of, jobs, and just like, sometimes if you move too quick, that can be dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just know that about myself, man. I'm a mover. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah, not the most patient person, but it's definitely I would say growing edge. That's the word I like to use for anything I need to work on in my life. It's a growing edge.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? You strike me as a pretty patient.
I tend to be patient. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know. I'm just having 4 boys and you just learn patience because you just know it's just not going to happen so quick and you're not going to get out the door very quick.
No.
I don't know. But I tend to be pretty patient. I was going to ask you, like, where are you most impatient? Like, what things like really get you, worked up as far as like, oh, let's go. Come on. Let's not wait around for this.
Well, it's with a lot of things, to be honest with you, because, I like to think that I'm a charismatic decision maker.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So like when I know what I think needs to be accomplished, I just want it to be done as quick as possible because I have a desire to move on to the next thing.
Right.
Right. And that's, we know how that can be detrimental to our spiritual lives, always wanting to move on to the next thing, because then you always risk alienating yourself from the season that you're living in right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes God leaves us in seasons for a lot longer than we'd like to be there.
Yeah.
To either teach us things or for us to, there's always things to learn in hard seasons of life and in long seasons of life where not a whole lot seems to change.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you see something really clear in your mind, like, hey, it's
already done.
It's already done.
It's already
like,
done.
Let's
I see the picture.
Yeah.
It's done. Now I just got to figure out how to get to that done.
Okay. All right.
So it's a little insight.
Yeah, that's good. I'm the kind of guy who likes just give me a little more time and I can try to make it better.
Yeah.
And so I don't, the whole idea of like moving on, I'm like, well, just give me a little bit. I can do a little bit better. I can make it, and
which plays off in our working relationship too, I think, because I know that we did our work in Genius, and you're heavy on the tenacity.
Yep.
Which is, to me that makes perfect sense. Like you're gonna make sure you see it to completion and it's done the right way.
Right.
Not just done. I see a project. It's like, man, I'm happy to get it started and get rolling with the excitement.
Yeah.
Once that excitement wears off and there's 20% of it left, I'm like, ready for somebody else to take that over, and I'm already on to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Well, any thoughts from the sermon? I just want anything that resonated with you, anything when we talked about, anything that comes with idea of impatience and slowing down for relationships.
I mean, you kind of geared pretty heavily on, really, I'd say almost, just marriage relationships almost to a degree.
I hit that hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the one place that we really feel the dangers of impatience the most.
Because we're yoked together, right?
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
And, like maturity when it comes to relationships is measured over years and years, not months or days.
Right.
And, it's interesting. We're walking through a friend right now who's going through a difficult divorce. And one of the, without giving away too much, one of the reasons is because, somebody in the relationship didn't feel like the other person had changed enough in a short period of time.
Mm.
So it's like, to me, that is that in action. It's like, hey, if we're not patient, we're not willing to walk alongside somebody through hard seasons. And you gave that a balance of a caveat in the message, right? Like sometimes there were reasons to move past things. There's a lot of unhealth that can come with that. And we don't want to enable was one of the words you used.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think most of us, could probably do some good by really sitting in a season, even if it's with somebody else, of like, hey, I know with me and my wife, right? I know there's times that we get frustrated with each other. Because it's like, hey, this is the thing that we do. And we've seen it over the years that we've been married. And we've gotten better at it as we've been together now for, 17, 18 years, whatever, so we're getting up there, but there's still things that we're working on that we're not all the way there yet.
Right.
So it's like, what does patience look like in the long term? And, how do we make sure that we're giving that other person the space and the grace to grow at God's timing and not at our own timing, which is another phrase that was really good from the message, right? What is God's timing? And making sure we're not rushing and just doing what we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find like the more that you're in a relationship with somebody, the more history and there's a longer track record. And so it's easier in some ways to get impatient because it's like you kind of build a narrative for that person. Like they're always late, right?
Yeah.
So I'm tired of waiting because they're always late.
Uh-huh.
You can lose patience a lot easier. Where somebody's a stranger, you're apt to give them more grace and be more patient because you don't have that track record. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's not enough trust built that you could say a hard thing. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And sometimes those hard things we say out of too much comfort, right? And
Yeah.
I had a counselor friend one time who said, hey, one of the things that I always will say red flags in relationships, and I catch myself doing it quite a bit too, is using that word always.
Yeah.
Like you're always this, because now you're placing that image on the identity of that person.
Yep.
And we know what kind of damage can come with that.
Yep. So yeah, we got to be careful of building narratives around people and giving them labels and identities of this is what you're always like and always going to be like, and for sure.
So maybe a good way to rephrase it. This is what you're like right now, but I'd like to see us move towards,
totally
a different picture, which is the same way God is with us, right? If we want to understand patience, we just have to look at our own lives and say, how patient is God with us?
Yeah.
Let's be at least that patient to somebody else.
Right. Well, I think this is, as I think through this list that Paul gives us, love is patient. This is probably something that's getting harder over time as far as our modern era of just life and lifestyle and where we're going as a culture. This seems like this is going to be more of an issue because we just live in such a fast pace and ever speeding up pace of life. It seems like everything is just accelerating. And so, I want to talk a little bit about that. Like as far as culture, like what do you see as culture? How does our culture and the speed of our culture impact our level of patience or impatience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it completely destroys our ability to be patient in a lot of ways. Like the two words that come to mind right away is instant gratification.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can right now, like you have a question, man, I've got an answer. So I have in my pocket, it's a little supercomputer.
Yeah.
I can find the answer to anything. If I can't find the answer, probably Chat GPT will find the answer for me.
Yep.
With access to news, access to any information you want at your fingertips all the time. And what are we marketed towards? Right? Marketing companies will market towards us and say, hey, this is going to be fast. It's going to be easy. Whether it's in food, whether it's in buying a car, hey, you can do this online. You don't even need to look at it. We're going to bring it to you. We're going to make it as simple as possible so you don't have to be inconvenienced.
Yeah.
So if I have instant gratification and I'm never placing myself in a spot of inconvenience, I mean, really, we kind of create a culture of narcissists.
Totally.
Right? It's all about me.
Yeah.
Because everything else is catered towards me.
Yep. It's what I want, when I want it, and how I want it. Yeah.
So like, how many lessons do we lose in life that, God wants to teach us? And, I hope, and I like to think that, okay, we're placed in a certain time in a certain place.
Yeah.
Because we have a mission that God gives us and that there's something we can do that we can handle some of that to some degree. So like I take comfort in that where it's like, oh, it's such a hard time to live because of all this. But it's like, man, there's also, man, maybe God chose me to be in this place at this time because this is a challenge that we were made for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Yeah. I read a book now 3-4 years ago called The Congregation in a Secular Age. It's by Andrew Root. It's a bit academic at times, but it was really, really good as it relates to all the things that we're talking about with the idea of the pace of life is accelerating. Just our perception of time is accelerating. He does a really good job of tracing this back and going, we had basically a sacred set of time, like sacred time versus secular time. And back in the day, it was all based around a sacred time and starting off with sun up and down, moon. But once the church got involved, the church actually set sacred time too. You would have the church bells ring and time of prayer and time of gathering. But then we've moved to a secular age, and technology has really just sped everything up. And the rate of, he talks about the rate of decay, like, when you buy something, even just when you buy something, how long does that last, right?
It's nice to be on a refrigerator. How long did it last compared to the last one?
Yeah, right? Or a dishwasher. Or phones,
years.
and it just seems like just everything is speeding up. And so that is just a wake-up call. When I was reading that, I'm like, just a wake-up call to, I guess, reorient myself of going, am I in this flow of this secular time that's just pushing me faster and faster and making me feel like I need to hurry, and I need to hurry others, and I need to make decisions real quick, and I need to make sure everyone's right there with me. And it was a good reminder of like, man, we do need to slow down. We do need to figure out ways to slow down.
Yeah, and it's a rhythm killer, right?
It is.
Like everything, what I love about that, and I haven't read that particular book, but even going back to church calendars and, whether that's seasonal sacred time versus normal time, whether it's, the day to day, here's the rhythm of when we pray and what we do. Like there's so much emphasis placed on rhythm for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm a musician, so like rhythm's my jam, right? So to me, it's like, hey, if I can't get in rhythm, like if I don't feel that pulse, feel that groove of where I'm at, it's really hard to become comfortable. It's really hard to really grow in any meaningful way because everything is always changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like we're designed to, like our pace of life means there is no rhythm. Everything is instant, and it's gonna be 5 o'clock this day. It's gonna be 3 a.m. this day. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think we've lost a ton of the sense of rhythm, and work schedules don't help with that either. And sports schedules definitely don't help with that.
Sure. Yeah.
And our society is really just trying to eat up all the time that we have to fit in one more thing.
Yep. Now, I like that word rhythm. I think that's a good word to think about, as far as rhythm is all about speed, right? I mean, there's a pace to it, and there's a boom, boom. That's what we do. But everyone wants to go pick up the speed, pick up the speed. And so what I love about this book is it gives some practical examples at the end as far as how we slow down. And we've talked about some other things too, with spiritual disciplines, with the book, the Elimination.
Yeah, Ruthless Elimination.
Yep, John Mark Comer's book. So let's talk about that. How do we, if culture is speeding us up, continually just accelerating, how do we slow down? Because I think this is so important when it comes to patience and people. How do we put rhythms in our life or habits in our life to help us to slow down so that we can be with people and be more present with people rather than always trying to push them along too?
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with allowing us to dictate the pace of life instead of allowing us to be dictated by life.
Yeah.
Right. So, when I talk to parents, and my kids aren't old enough to really have these extreme sports schedules. And let's be honest, there's probably only one of my 2 kids that's really going to be involved in sports.
Well, you never.
The other one's gone a different route. That's fine.
Sure.
We haven't got to that point where we really feel the effects of that, but we do feel the effects of busyness.
Yeah.
Like before we got to this church, like that was one of the books that kind of wrecked me. Yeah. Was understanding how busy I was, and it was busy for all the right reasons.
Sure, it's all good things.
You can be busy doing great things. You can be busy doing God things.
Yep.
And still be living at a pace that we're not designed to live at.
Yeah.
And then that leads to burnout. And then that leads to resentment. And then that leads to cynicism.
Yep.
And ultimately, you look around and say, why am I so bitter and grumpy all the time? It's like, I don't have any pace to my life. It's just go, go, go all the time.
Yeah.
To the point where I remember having conversations early in our marriage where it's like, when can we take a vacation? It's like, well, let's look 12 months out. No, that's not going to work. How about a year and a half out? Maybe we can fit one in right here in this 1 week. And it gets to the point where it will drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So like, understanding what a healthy rhythm looks like, you have to be countercultural
Yeah.
and you have to actively push back against it. It's not just not doing something, it's actively doing the opposite.
Yeah. And what are some things that you do to keep yourself at
Yeah.
a good rhythm, good pace?
Yeah, I can be my own worst enemy a lot of times when it comes to I thrive in busyness. At least I think I do.
Yeah.
So my gravitation that I've learned about myself is I will always try to fit something else in if I think there's a way to do it, because it might be because it's a new hobby or it's something that sounds like fun or like, oh, this will only take one other night of the week out and I can fit that. I've still got two open ones, and then that gets eaten up by, oh, we're gonna go do this thing, and they're all good things again. But I've had to put boundaries on my life. Like I'll have conversations with my wife Nicole, and we'll say, okay, how many nights this week are we open to either hosting something, being hospitable? How many nights should we do something with the family? We've started doing that on Saturdays as part of our kind of Sabbath routine on Saturdays. Like, let's take a family trip. Doesn't really matter what it is. We're just going to use this as family time, no screens.
Yeah.
And making sure that we have a couple of free nights always built into our weekly rhythm, because we need that to recharge, even if we don't want it. Sometimes that's like taking your own medicine. It's like, I don't want to do it. My gravitation's to not do that. It's just to fill up that time because there's more fun stuff to do.
Sure.
And there's more good work and more good ministry to do sometimes.
Yeah. It's very true. Yeah, I think this is why we encourage people to really practice the spiritual disciplines that Jesus modeled for us. When I think about prayer really makes me slow down. Like, I mean, it seems so unproductive when I just sit and talk with Jesus. I'm not getting anything done. I can't show any like work. I can't like say this is the fruit of my labor.
Yeah.
But I know it's effective. I know it's important. I know it's good for me. And partly because it slows me down. It just makes me like be present. Because I feel like when you're accelerating, all you're thinking about is the future. Yeah. All you're thinking about is the goal, and not what you have in the moment. You're not as thankful. You're not as joyful. And so, prayer I think is a huge one.
Yeah.
That can slow us down. Of course, scripture reading I think is an important one. Having a daily quiet time of just again pausing, reflecting. I think even the idea of service. When I'm serving somebody else, that makes me slow down.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, I'm not achieving my goal. I'm trying to help achieve your goal. I'm trying to help meet your agenda, whatever that is. And
yeah, there's definitely a sanctifying quality to learning to serve others, and it tones down how we feel about ourselves, but increases our joy, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's more joy in giving than there is in receiving. And that is absolutely true. Yeah. And as Christ followers, one of the things that we are called to do is to serve. We're called to be a part of the solution, not just be a sideline, armchair quarterback and point out everything else that's wrong while we sit and don't do anything.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And again, I think we talked about in our sermon, impatience and control and wanting to take control of things and finding shortcuts and doing things our way rather than God's way. I think that's important to recognize.
Yeah, and I like that term to use of God's way. That made me think a little bit.
Yeah.
Because again, you can be trying to do the right thing, but if you're not doing it in the right way, it can still be the wrong thing.
It can still be the wrong thing.
And there's lessons I think that God does want to teach us in His timing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting. He's, he could move so fast.
Sure.
And yet he seems to move so slow.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And just looking at the, going back to that rhythm piece, they're just looking at the rhythm of the world, of how the sun rises and sunsets. And it's when you think about what time is, and this is going to get real broadly philosophical.
Let's do it.
It's just repetition over and over for centuries, or depending on where you fall on all that stuff, how old things around us actually are. Like there's a repetition to it, and there's a comfort in that repetition over and over and over. I heard a pastor say one time that, one of the miraculous things about how God's character is that He never gets tired of the same thing over and over again. So the same way children, and I see my children come up to me and might ask me the same question 30 times in a row, or every single day I'm getting the same question. When are we leaving? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Yeah. And I think to myself, I am so tired of this question. I've answered it 30 times. And the reality is, I don't think God ever gets tired of that.
Right.
Go back to faith like a child. It's simple. It's repetitive. It's like God doesn't get tired of the stuff that we get tired of.
Yeah. Well, he's not aging, right? He doesn't feel the atrophy or the energy loss or anything else that we feel. He's always full of life and only getting fuller, right? And
absolutely.
I think when I read this book, the actual recommendation for churches when it comes to how do we slow down, it was interesting. He actually recommended focusing on children.
Okay.
Children's ministry.
Yeah.
in a way, children force us to slow down,
Okay.
right? Because especially young kids, like super young kids, you can't you can't go fast with them.
No.
You know,
No.
you can't. You know,
Yeah. Ask me how many minutes it took to get my 4-year-old out the door this morning because he wanted to stay and play a little bit longer to try to
Right.
get into daycare.
right?
No, I just need to stay. I just need
Yeah.
to stay.
And just children's ministry and the idea of, I mean, kids are so present much more than we are oftentimes. Like they just want to play right now.
Yep.
Like they don't think about let's just what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And so just having a robust kids ministry and getting more people involved in kids ministry helps us slow ourselves down in a way, he says. And so I thought that was good. That was just a good reminder of how important kids ministries are,
Yeah.
not just to our children, but I think to adults as well. When you're serving in there, you do have to slow down. You do have to exercise your patience muscles
Yes. All the
way more with kids.
good.
And as if God knew what he was doing when he gives us kids in our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, what's it look like for us to go to God with that same childlike faith?
Yeah.
Like, what are the lessons we can learn from that? And there's a lot. There's a lot there.
There's totally a lot there. So, yeah, I don't think we look at our kids and go, I can learn some things from them. But I think certainly Jesus pointed us to go, oh, I think you could learn a few things. So, yeah.
And you look at kids that don't have the cynicism yet. The world hasn't
All right.
beat them down yet.
They have this wonder about them and
Everything
yeah.
is new and exciting, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Even if we're bored by it.
Yep, there's a joy. I love it. So, yeah. So if you're not helping out with Grace Kids, man,
Now's a great time. Man.
that was a great time. I think you're missing something. I was just
Yeah.
in there a couple weeks ago, and it was so much fun. It was invigorating for me to take a lesson and get it to where kids can understand, and to see them lights come on, and to see them actually understand some things that I thought, man, this is maybe a little bit beyond you, but no, they got it. So
Yeah.
it was great. It was great.
I love that, man. I'd love to see all adults, even just spend a day back there with the kids, just being with them, getting the energy from them.
Yeah.
And because when you're around adults all the time, you do become a little more cynical because you gauge yourself to the same level of what's around you. And adults are so cynical.
Yeah.
And, people are sometimes so not joy filled these days.
Yeah.
It's easy to become like that ourselves. So it's a great reminder.
Yeah. So thanks to all those who are already helping with Grace Kids. It really means a lot. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
I can't wait to see where that ministry goes in the future, man. That's
Yeah.
a lot of brightness there.
Some really good stuff coming down the pipe.
Yep,
We'll
can't
just a
wait.
little teaser, but
Yep, that's
a lot
right.
of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. So, well, very good. Anything else to think about on impatience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I just maybe just final thoughts. Taking time in our lives and forcing ourselves to actively fight back against the pace in which we live, and not be dictated by what the world tries to force upon us.
Yeah.
And saying, what is God trying to teach me in this season, and what would happen if I lingered in it a little bit,
Yeah.
instead of just waiting for it to be done. Because we're always on to the next big thing, right? What's the next season of my life? It's like it's so hard to be happy in the season that we're in,
Yeah.
because we're always looking forward to what we think is going to come.
Right. Yep.
So
Yep.
finding gratitude in the season.
It's true. It's very true. And I think that's going back to relationships, just having gratitude for the person you're in a relationship with, even though they may frustrate you at times, even though it creates tension, being thankful that, hey, they are in your life and they don't have to be.
That's right.
And so whether that's friendships or marriage or whatever, it's important to recognize. So yeah, man, I really am looking forward to the rest of the series. I know we're talking about kindness next week as a
about
teaser.
kindness this week.
Yeah,
That's right.
So looking forward to that. And thanks for having the conversation.
Yeah, it's good, man. That's an important one. I love that conversation.
Yeah.
And if people want to talk more about it, I know that any of us are open to continue that, because there's a huge element of discipleship in that, right? Disciple making,
Exactly.
learning those rhythms.
Learn the
How to
rhythms.
slow down.
Yep. And I think disciple making makes us slow down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
for sure.
Walk at somebody else's pace.
You're walking with somebody else. You got to walk at their pace, not yours.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a
And
huge
maybe it's your spouse, right?
Yeah,
They have to walk at their pace a little bit. So lots to learn.
lots to learn. Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. As always, the best best thing you can do.
I got you covered right here.
Let's
Remember
do
how
it.
you mouthed me the words to Gracie the last couple of weeks?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna mouth you this right here.
Okay.
We are embarrassingly easy to find.
That's right.
You can follow us on Podbean. You can follow us wherever you get your podcast content: Spotify, Amazon, Apple. We're on all those services. You can also check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/Centerville Grace, or just subscribe on Podbean. We are on our 52nd episode now. We just crossed over 2,000 downloads. So thanks for just being a part of the journey so far. And it's going to be a lot more conversations to come.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
So thanks for joining us.
Take care.